In Revelation chapter 2, verses 12 through 17, John addressed the faithful Christians in Pergamum as those who dwell where Satan's throne is. Pergamum was one of the chief cities of the Roman province of Asia, with only Ephesus as a rival. One of the city's greatest claims to fame in the province was the honor of being named Neokoros, or Temple Warden of the imperial cult in Asia Minor, for its construction and consecration of a temple to the worship of Augustus and the goddess Roma, the deified personification of Rome itself, in 19 BC. The honor of the Neokoros title was prominently featured in many civic inscriptions and became a touchstone for the city's identity. This inscription in the ancient gymnasium in Pergamum, honoring the director of the facility, identifies the city and its leaders as the council and the people of the Pergamenes, the first to be awarded the title of Temple Warden. Later, the city of Ephesus was also awarded the Neokorate for its recently built temple to Domitian. Pergamum, however, could still claim preeminence over its rival for having been distinguished first in the province, as attested in this inscription from the late 1st or early 2nd century. The Pergamenes were not content merely to have been first to win this honor. Shortly after Ephesus had won this title for its Temple of Domitian, Pergamum continued the competition and invested in an equally massive temple to Trajan, who ruled as emperor from 98 to 117 AD. The temple to Trajan towered above the worshippers and passers-by, a testimony to the city's enthusiasm for the emperor and estimation of his greatness. For its pledge and display of loyalty, the city was awarded a second Neokorate and enjoyed renewed preeminence. Civic inscriptions bear witness to the city's pride in being named Temple Warden of the imperial cult a second time. It would henceforth refer to itself as the Council and People of the Pergamenes, twice awarded the Neokorate. Ephesus continued the competition after Trajan's death, building a temple consecrated to Trajan's successor Hadrian, who ruled from 117 to 138 AD. For its support of and loyalty to the emperor, Ephesus won its second Neokorate. Pergamum would continue to claim preeminence in the province, as in this inscription, on the basis of having been first to win a second Neokorate. The connection of civic identity and pride with imperial cult is very strong. The cult of the emperor and Roma, however, was but one facet of religion in the city of Pergamum. Several traditional Greco-Roman gods were worshipped in splendid temples throughout the city. Many of these religious sites on the Acropolis of Pergamum would have been prominently visible even from far away. In the 1st century, the altar of Zeus and temple of Athena crowned the brow of the hill, while the temple of Dionysus was prominently located halfway up the hill. These are the foundations of the altar of Zeus, located on the southern crest of the Acropolis of Pergamum. The massive throne-like altar itself is really more like an open-air temple. Complete with columned porticos surrounding its staircase and inner courtyards, it now sits in the Pergamum Museum in Berlin. Many scholars believe that John was speaking about this distinctive landmark in particular in Revelation chapter 2, verse 13, when he said that Pergamum was home to Satan's throne. Jews often identified the pagan gods with demons, claiming that those who worshipped idols were really worshipping demons. John exhibits a similar perspective in Revelation chapter 9, verses 20 to 21, as does the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 19 to 21. Identifying the Greeks' chief god Zeus with a chief demon Satan would have been a natural extension of this. Below the northeastern crest of the Acropolis sit the expansive precincts of the temple of Demeter, the goddess of abundance, especially of an abundant harvest. The altar sits in the middle of the precinct with the remains of the sanctuary of the goddess behind it. One major difference between ancient temples and modern religious practice is that the worshippers don't go into the house of the god. They stay respectfully outside, and the rituals and sacrifices are conducted on the altar in front of the temple itself. This marble carving originally adorned the altar in the temple of Demeter. Here we see a priestess of Demeter preparing to sacrifice a bull to the goddess. A pathway leading north-northwest from the great theater, carved into the hillside of the Acropolis, takes one to the remains of the temple of Dionysus. The performance of Greek tragedies and the worship of Dionysus were often linked. For example, Sophocles and Aeschylus wrote their famous plays, including Oedipus the King and Agamemnon, for the greater Dionysiac festival in Athens. On the north side of the Acropolis sits the temple of Hera, the wife of Zeus. Whether John had in mind the imperial cult, which he would describe as worship of the beast and its image, or the cults of Zeus and the traditional gods, Pergamum would indeed seem to him a stronghold of Satan. Indeed, it might have seemed to John the location of his very seat of power, as he deceived humanity to take what was due God and give it instead to sticks and stones and pretentious human rulers. The importance of the imperial cult and the cults of the traditional Greek and Roman gods for the city would also explain why its inhabitants would be hostile towards the Christian movement. These Christians had come to believe and to proclaim that all their neighbors' temples, sacrifices, and piety was a sham, or worse, an evil. This hostility came to a head in the murder of Antipas, a Christian whom John mentions by name in Revelation chapter 2, verse 13. John rightly saw in Antipas the shape of things to come for Christians who refused to bow, as John saw it, before Satan's throne.
Well, that's all for this episode. If you're interested in any of the topics mentioned in today's show, be sure to check out the links below. And as always, subscribe